Good morning on the West Coast and good afternoon on the East Coast. Today's September 15th. It's the final week of summer, and I hope it's a beautiful day wherever you may be. I'm John Yarrington, CEO of the Performance Driven Marketing Institute, a 501c6 not-for-profit trade association dedicated to protecting, promoting, and advancing the direct-to-consumer and direct response advertising industries. And on behalf of the entire PDMI team, it's my pleasure to welcome you back to yet another fun-filled and exciting episode of the PDMI Take 20. As a reminder, the PDMI Take 20 is a quick-hitting roundtable discussion led by industry experts on trending topics, all in 20 minutes or less. And today we'll be continuing our Back to series, talking about back to events. However, before we get started, please allow me to do a little bit of housekeeping. If you'd like to ask a question, and we encourage you to do so, please feel free to use the questions tab located in the control panel. Please also note, you're welcome to ask questions throughout today's conversation, but we were going to hold all answers to the questions until the end of today's discussion. Alrighty, folks, with that said, it's my pleasure to introduce today's moderator. He's cooler than the flip side of the pillow. He's the fearless Chris Foster. Chris is Vice President of New Business at Modern Postcard, a direct marketing agency located in Carlsbad, California. In addition to his day job, Chris teaches brand strategies at UCSD Extension courses, and he's the chairperson of the PDMI's Brand Response Council. As always, Chris, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you, and take it away, my friend.
Thanks so much. Well, we're so excited to have you guys for our Back to. This is going to be back to events. So, do you remember when we used to attend business conferences, networking events, summits, lunch and learns? Oh, we also used to go to concerts and like clubs. So from live music festivals to your favorite local club jazz bands, and from trade shows to local business networking, the entire industry of event planning and live performance was completely upended, and we all know that. So the question now is, how is this industry going to rebound? What does it look like moving forward? And we know that the word of the day is still uncertainty, but different venues in different cities and different communities are handling it differently, right? Will symphonies and venues draw enough volume to make up for a lost year? Do virtual business events still persist, thrive, or do they cohabitate alongside physical events? So this Take 20, we're going to explore the aftershocks, the recovery, what it means to media and brands in this space, and what it means to event planners, event organizers, and the events themselves. Joining me today are Ron Hadler and Kevin Hayes. We're so glad to have you guys. And normally I would immediately pass on, but for my moderation duties today, I think I'm going to adjust it slightly because I have some new experiences because I just came from an event. I just returned from the White Label Expo in fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. Actual trade show. It was in the actual Las Vegas Convention Center, believe it or not. So the White Label Expo is something we signed up for 2 years ago. We signed a contract. I was like, oh my God, we signed up for this 2 years ago, and it was delayed and pushed back and pushed back. So we roll up 500 exhibitors, and they purported and posited about 10,000 attendees. I'm not exactly sure of the final numbers, but it was a lot. And one of the things that Las Vegas did, which I thought was very appropriate, was they required masks everywhere. Vaccination status or not, masks were required in all indoor venues, everywhere. So in the casinos where you would walk through to get your dinner or walk through to anywhere, everybody was masked. In the trade show floor, everybody was masked. And in fact, they had people walking around. If you were to take a drink and kind of leave it down, they would say, excuse me, ma'am, excuse me, sir, mask up, please, even while we were setting up the booths. So they wanted to take extra precaution because they knew they had tens of thousands of people, or at least thousands of people, in a single enclosed space, and they wanted to keep everybody safe. So from my recent experience for those trade shows, I thought it was very appropriate, and quite honestly, I felt safe. I was telling the gentleman, as extra precaution, I wore 2 masks. I took them off and put on 2 masks when I went out to dinner. It was fine. Everybody was fine. Everybody was appropriate. Everybody kept their distance. And I think the general business community vibe was, let's not mess this up. Let's not have a problem where business networks can't get together physically. Because from my personal experience, The virtual summits have been great. I think that the PDMI virtual summits have been fantastic, but there's nothing quite like the chance to be face-to-face with a business community and to collaborate and to communicate in a networking event that's physical, on-premise, and with other people. It's an irreplaceable experience, and I believe it's an irreplaceable moment for business professionals to get together and simply learn from one another and become a little bit better and develop their own personal network. Whether that network leads to another job or not doesn't really matter. What matters is the personal and professional connections that you make, because in the end of the day, as you build your career and build your professional life, it's the people around you that make it more special. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how this industry is going to change and how business events are going to change. One other note too is one of our colleagues on the PDMI did go to a summit recently, in a business summit, and they required vaccination to attend. So that's maybe the first question I'll ask. And Ron, I guess I'll toss this off to you. As you look into the business environment and the business community and the networking, local networking opportunities, do you think that vaccination requirement is going to be something that we'll see as part and parcel of the setup of these events?
Yeah, and it is certainly something that, even within our company, that is important for us in how we are operating, that you are vaccinated, have proof of vaccination. We don't have 100% vaccination even within our company. And so I think that is, going to be a factor. And it's one of those things, one of the things that you mentioned that resonated with these folks that are attending these conventions is that business need, the desire to network is overriding any personal point of views, right? It's more about community, and that's rising up and really becoming a significant point in how we're approaching events. The great protocols and processes that are being followed in order to kind of do that, and being vaccinated is just another one of those points of protocol. So I do think it will be becoming a factor. We've seen that, coming in. New York City starting to do a lot of that, those sort of things. Just saw this morning that NFL Buffalo Bills Stadium is requiring vaccination. So I do think those things are going to be a factor. And, I'm encouraged by your experience recently in Las Vegas.
Oh, excellent. Kevin, what do you think about the vaccination requirements? Is this something where you see, as Ron, I love that idea of just basic protocol for business events?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Ron that that's kind of a no-brainer that people would show proof of vaccination. There's a conference that we're thinking of attending that's right after PDMI, and my understanding from Media Post is that they're requiring either proof of vaccination or a negative test right before the event. And they're obviously also implementing masks and things like that for any kind of indoor activities and in the event itself. But it would make me feel more comfortable if it was a requirement that people were vaccinated and that the people that we're interacting with are vaccinated.
See, and I think what's interesting about that is that last comment you made, Kevin, about personally making you feel more comfortable. So I think, Ron, you touched on a really important point of community versus point of view, right? And it could very well be that we know that this COVID is not going away. We know that it's not disappearing from the world. So the question is there now a new point of protocol where you look at the business community first and say, look, vaccination or negative COVID test, period. And that becomes then part and parcel of attending some of these events, because truly these events are opt-in, right? I mean, you're required to go to a business luncheon, right? And so we were even thinking in Modern Postcard with our direct mail crash courses, do we want to require vaccination or negative COVID test? And if so, does that actually increase participation? Right? You said, Kevin, you feel more comfortable attending a business event where those protocols were in place. So Kevin, I want to return to you. You had mentioned about some stats about concerts and festivals because, well, Ron had mentioned the NFL stadium, Buffalo Bills, and the Seattle Seahawks requiring proof of vaccination or negative COVID test. On the flip side, in Tampa Bay recently for their opening season game, they did not require that. It was whatever. So I think it's going to be different based on where you are. So what are you seeing from the statistics standpoint, Kevin?
Well, the big festival that kind of kicked off the year, the Lollapalooza that was in Chicago, was 400,000 people over 3 days. They did not require proof of vaccination. There were masks required in certain areas, but I guess they just didn't have the capability of being able to govern that or prove that people had a vaccination or had a negative test. Two festivals that are coming up in New York, the Global Citizens and the what's the second one? Global Citizens and the Governor's Ball. They're both going to require either proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test within 72 hours of attending the event. So a lot of it, I think, is just kind of logistically, like how do you manage that? How do you prove that? And how do you guard against people coming in that either don't have proof of vaccination or don't have a negative COVID test within the last 72 hours. So a lot of it, I think, is just like logistics. Both of these are also outside events. They're not inside. Governor's Ball is out on Governor's Island off of Manhattan, and then, the Global Citizens in Central Park. So all, again, outdoor type of events. And as you're saying with the football, I watched football all weekend, and there were fans there with no masks on, full houses. So it sounds like kind of regionally they're dealing with a different way, depending on what state it is, probably. And I guess it depends on the team. So there's not really a unified thing that the NFL has really put in place.
It is interesting you mentioned about the not unified experience. So recently, several weeks ago, I went to a beautiful stage in San Diego. Although I'm sure you guys have been hearing about with the upcoming PDMI in San Diego, our vaccination rates in San Diego County and the city are through the roof. So it's extremely high vaccination rate, not only the single dose, but of the double shots. So there's a place called The Shell, which is an outdoor venue right on the waterfront here in San Diego. And so I attended a concert there, and most people were masked, even if it was outside. 60–70% of the people were masked, even though 70+% of the folks were vaccinated, if not 100%. There is a care that certain, I think, venues and regions take. So it could very well be that, Kevin, you mentioned, that what would that protocol look like and how does it change for venue? I think that might be the name of the game in the next year or so, is that every venue is going to treat it just a little bit differently. And there's probably going to be no one way in which folks do it. Thomas had mentioned before our broadcast that the NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters show, was canceled recently. They just sent it out. So it might be that the bigger venues that are less controllable get canceled, and it could open the way for more smaller venues. I guess, Ron, I'll go to you as you start looking at your agency, trying to find, business lunches, connections with some of your clients. Is this something that you think can resurface in the next year with some protocols?
And we're even starting to do some of that. We have happy hours. We've had virtual happy hours, almost the entire time during COVID. And so there's been 2 in-person happy hours here in the past couple of months. So we are getting and doing those. They're all outside. And they're, being able to experience, and, the results of that and the pictures that come back is just these amazing smiles, because everybody's just, missing that sort of warmth of being able to kind of see somebody, in person. So I think, everybody wants to get there. I mean, I mentioned this in the previous Take 20, was just, I know everybody wants to get back to party like it was 2019. And, as we mentioned, we're just not going to get there. This is ongoing. We still have got to be able to get these protocols and processes until we can get COVID to be almost a non-factor. And that's, I think, nobody knows where that future is going to be there for us. So it is.
So one thing that, and this is going to be another, you heard it first on the PDMI Take 20, I think that there will probably be some businesses that will emerge that help with the logistics. So Kevin, you had mentioned, gosh, I don't know how they're going to do it, right? How does Lollapalooza do? How do these venues logistically handle? My hunch is that there's some entrepreneur somewhere actually developing an approach for making proof of vaccination and or a negative COVID test something easy for a venue to scan and measure. So like I said, you heard it here first. I think
You
the last
already have the Excelsior pass, so you put the last date of your COVID vaccination, and then it actually becomes an app. So when you go to restaurants or any place that requires it, you just present the app and it shows proof of vaccination. So, but there's a step to do it, and not everybody's going to do it. And what if you're in New Jersey and you're coming to New York? So there's a lot of factors that you have to kind of figure in there. But at least that's a good start there with that Excelsior pass.
I was curious as to even with the conventions, why they weren't handing out branded masks and PPE for folks. That seems like an opportunity to do a bit of advertising, and that and it's I would call it swag quite, but it is something that is an opportunity.
I think that's a great idea, Ron. I think that having branded, personal protective equipment, whether it be masks or a shield or glasses, I think that's a really good idea. And it could, I think that in the end, as we start migrating and, some big shows get canceled, some big shows move ahead, I think that there's going to be a surge of local, I should use that word. I think there's going to be more local business events where it could be more controlled. Right, so they could have networking events in outside venues. For those small networking events, Kevin, you've got the Excelsior. We don't have anything like that here in San Diego that I'm aware of, but that would actually be a more manageable protocol, right? If I've got 30 or 40 people showing up, say, great, for 30, 40 people, I need to see this kind of proof. So it could very well be that this upcoming year, more local events and business events are happening. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because part of it is also flying. I know in reaching out to people about meeting up at PDMI, a lot of them is either trepidation about flying or the corporate entity doesn't want their employees flying, which I think is actually probably one of the safer ways to go with flying. The way that they clean the airplane and the protocols that they have in place for flying, there's still that kind of element to where people don't want to get in an airplane. So you're right, maybe a local kind of networking thing might be something that is a good, step in for that type of those type of events.
Right, because now what I've seen is I have not seen anything yet from a live event for the local San Diego American Marketing Association. There's a local group here, which is kind of sales and marketing professionals that get together. It's still virtual, and the survey went out. What would make you feel comfortable about coming back to live events, whether it's an outdoor setting, whether it's proof of vaccination, whether it's a negative COVID test, or all of the above? So I would not be surprised if that's a new kind of professional business networking opportunities that show up. And Kevin, I think the local makes it just easier and safer, and it also makes it possible to get the blessings of a parent company who is not allowing their employees to fly.
Yeah.
All right, so we are up at about 20 minutes. John, do we have any questions from any of the audience?
Hey guys, yeah, absolutely. We've got a few questions here for you. I'm going to start off with one on the seminar business for you. Historically, the seminar business has been a solid category for direct response industry, especially for the 2830s. Does anyone know the current status and the future expectations of that business?
I do not.
I do not, and I will say, while I don't know, the conjecture that I'll make is everything that we've just talked about. I think for seminars to be successful, you're going to have to protect the attendees, regardless of their points of view. If a seminar says everyone to attend must have a vaccination or a negative COVID test, period, and if it's an indoor seminar, we are requiring masks, not just my personal belief, my professional belief from a marketing perspective is those are the features that I would look for to help ensure safety to come to a seminar. Business seminars, like we said, they're voluntary, right? They're not required. You go to seminars for your own personal or professional growth. It's the easiest thing to not do. And so any barrier to attend a seminar, either location, price, time, or uncertainty about the safety of the venue, all of those things will be barriers to entry for the seminar business. So my recommendation, and the reason I say this is because we host our own seminars at Modern. My recommendation for those seminars: proof of vaccination, negative COVID test, masks required indoors.
The other thing I was going to say is I know this is kind of getting back to in person, and I think that just as from my personal experience, I've consumed more content in a seminar, webinar format over the past 2 years than I have at any previous time within my career. And the quality of the content, the accessibility, also consuming it at my leisure, because maybe I don't make it and I get sent the link and I watch the recording, has been increased. And so I think the availability for that content, it has increased, and that's a benefit of what's happened through COVID. I know everybody wants the human contact and being able to network, but I think there's been some benefits of this, using the technology available to us to get access to that high quality content that has been only available in person.
Yeah, I agree. There's been a lot of ones that I've, at the time that they were doing it, I wasn't able to listen to it live, but then I listened to it later when I had a moment, and it definitely is a benefit to do that, to have that.
I think that's a really good insight, Ron, because what we did at Modern is, instead of having our live direct mail crash courses, we shifted gears completely to do webinars. And lo and behold, we got more attendees, we got more registrants, right? People are watching recordings, and that's great. So I think that's true. And it could very well be that the seminars, the live seminars, a big part of that is the networking opportunity versus the content. Because the content you can get anywhere, but not the networking. So if that's true, and you're in the seminar business, then my recommendation is making sure that the networking event has everyone feeling as comfortable and as safe as possible. Reduce as much uncertainty as you can in the networking portion of those seminars.
Yeah, good feedback, guys. Here's a travel safety protocol question for you. Do you see a national vaccination number, perhaps a percentage, that would prompt the larger companies that continue to enforce travel restrictions to ease those and allow more business travel in the future?
Well, that number keeps shifting, but I mean,
Yeah, agreed. I think, everybody was trying to get to 75% vaccinated. That's essentially what, we had heard was herd immunity. And I don't know that that's still the same number. I think it needs to be higher. I think, that as we stated, in San Diego, we're kind of leading California. We have some pretty high vaccination rates, but yet even as you went to a concert, everybody's masked up. So it's still, I think, until we can, get these points, because, there's the variants are continuing to come at us. And, we don't know kind of what that future holds. We've got, a lot of road ahead of us to kind of go through this. So protocols and, process are what's going to help us get back to a semblance of normal, or the new normal, if you will.
And I feel like, at a certain point, we got to live our lives, right? I mean, we need to be careful. We need to be do the vaccination. We need to wear masks and things like that. But at a certain point, you gotta kind of how to live your life, and you have to, go out in the world, and there's always risk for everything. But if you can minimize it as much as possible, my hope is that things turn more to normal. But we'll obviously still have some of this in the background, kind of on an ongoing basis.
One analogy that I was thinking of when I was traveling is, everyone knows how much the world changed after 9/11, and one small microcosm, just the act of air travel changed. I wouldn't be surprised, John, if the act of business travel changes now out of COVID, where companies have certain requirements or there's certain protocols put in place that just never will go away until, sometime down the road where, COVID becomes something like polio, which is extraordinarily rare. But that might take years. So if until that point, basic, standard protocols for companies to feel comfortable about business travel are put in place, that's what I would expect.
And I think the airlines are doing a good job. Delta and United are both extending your status into 2022, even though you haven't, reached status for 2021 in terms of fly miles or segments and things like that. They're extending everybody's status into 2022. So that's smart, I think. Because they want the business traveler to come back. That's their bread and butter. So
Solid feedback, guys. Thank you. Here's another question for you. This one's kind of about virtual events. So a bit of an interesting twist from our conversation. The past year, we've seen lots of live events, such as concerts performed virtually. Is there a sustainable business model, here's the key of this question, that is ad supported for future virtual events once we move out of the pandemic?
Interesting. Ad supported. Because yeah, I mean, I think most people would default to just, charging to attend an event versus having ad supported. So I think there is a sustainable model there, whether that's ad supported or just direct charging the way that anybody else would in order to kind of do those events. I think in some senses, some of these virtual events have actually been superior into real live events. And I've seen that notice in some of the things I attend a demo days for local sort of university that churns out folks in a 6-month technical certificate, and we go to the demo days, and I did that year after year, and it happens like 2 or 3 times a year, and I'm able to kind of get in network. But when they moved to virtual and they had breakout rooms, it was actually a superior experience than being necessarily in person. I got more in-depth conversations. Everything was clear. It was just a bit of a chaos in person. And so the organization of virtual events, I think, it has been some increases. Now, a concert via your speakers at home and your setup versus in live, that's kind of night and day, apples to elephants.
Yeah, I'm not into the virtual concerts. I'd rather be there in person.
I think that maybe, John, one answer, and I don't know if it's the answer, is we talked about some hallmark phrases and ideas to come out of the back two, and how the industry and consumer behavior changed, focusing a lot of convenience and choice and flexibility, and personal values. It could very well be that, to Ron's point, you have a pick and choose, right? You could have an ad-supported virtual event, and people are willing to pay for that because that's what they want to do, and that's their choice, versus something where they have to pay for a virtual event and there's a ticket, versus something that's quote unquote free or ad-supported. Kevin would be like, no, I'm not interested in that, but other people might be like, yeah, that's actually really cool. During COVID, we went to some virtual play performances that some local theaters put in place, and it was a specific Zoom play. It was a purchased ticket, but you could also imagine larger productions doing it where it's ad supported. So I think that, I guess I've kind of gotten to the place where I don't think anything is impossible, and I don't think there's a single business model that's not sustainable. It's just a question of finding the niche audience who wants to participate in that particular model.
One further thought on that. I think there's some great examples. Hulu offers that sort of model for, basically showing their content. Amazon Prime now also has, I think through IMDb, showing ad-supported movies. So this idea of being able to show ads and getting that, live entertainment, there's a viable model there. That's
a good point. Those are great examples, Ron.
Alrighty, guys, awesome session. Ron, Kevin, thank you so much for your insight and your wisdom. Appreciate you sharing today. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. Before we close out, I'd like to take a moment to invite you to join us for our next episode of the PDMI Take 20, hosted Wednesday, September 29th at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Also, we look forward to seeing each and every one of you in San Diego at PDMI West, October 4th through 6th. For more information on registration, housing, and the event in general, please visit thepdmi.com. Thanks again, everyone, and make it a great day.